Donald Trump once called NATO obsolete. Now he is questioning the future of the most powerful military alliance in history. If the United States steps back from NATO, Europe could be exposed. Russia could expand. China could push further. So the real question is not just whether NATO could collapse. The real question is what happens to the world if America leaves. NATO is the most powerful military alliance on Earth. It was created in 1949 to counter the Soviet Union. Today, it has more than 30 member countries. Its core promise is simple. If one member is attacked, all members respond. This is Article 5. This single rule has prevented major wars in Europe for more than 70 years. Here is a critical fact most people don't realize. The United States accounts for roughly 70% of NATO's total military spending. The U.S. military budget alone is larger than all European NATO members combined. The U.S. provides aircraft carriers, nuclear deterrence, missile defense systems, global logistics, intelligence and surveillance. Without the United States, NATO loses most of its real power. Europe has armies, but the United States has global force projection. Trump has criticized NATO for years. He has called it outdated. He has accused European allies of free riding. He has questioned why the U.S. should defend countries that don't pay enough. Officially, Trump has never formally announced a plan to leave NATO, but he has openly suggested that the U.S. should reconsider its commitment. His advisors have discussed reducing U.S. obligations. So while a full exit is unlikely, a major pullback is very realistic. Legally, this is complicated. A U.S. president cannot easily leave NATO alone. Congress would likely block it. The Senate originally approved NATO membership, but a president can weaken NATO without leaving it. By cutting funding, by withdrawing troops, by questioning Article 5 commitments. And that would be enough to destabilize the alliance. Supporters argue there are benefits. First, cost savings. The U.S. spends hundreds of billions maintaining bases and troops in Europe. Second, less foreign entanglement. The U.S. would avoid being dragged into European wars. Third, political appeal at home. America First resonates with voters who are tired of global commitments. From this perspective, NATO is seen as a burden. But the downsides are enormous. First, loss of global leadership. NATO is the backbone of U.S. influence in Europe. Second, Europe could drift away from the United States. They might build independent defense systems. Some countries could even align more with China. Third, Russia would gain massive strategic space. And fourth, global credibility would collapse. Allies in Asia, like Japan and South Korea, would question U.S. commitments. Leaving NATO would signal that America is stepping back from global leadership. Europe would panic. Germany, France, Poland, and the Baltic states would accelerate military spending. Some countries might consider building nuclear weapons. The European Union could push for a unified European army. But building a U.S.-level military would take decades. For Russia, a weakened NATO is a historic opportunity. Eastern Europe would become vulnerable. The Baltic states would feel exposed. Ukraine would face extreme pressure. Moscow could expand influence without firing a single shot. A divided NATO is a strategic victory for Russia. China would quietly celebrate. If the U.S. pulls back from Europe, China gains freedom in Asia. Taiwan becomes more vulnerable. The South China Sea becomes more contested. A weaker NATO means a distracted United States. And distraction is opportunity. Formally, NATO would not collapse overnight. But functionally, it could weaken dramatically. Alliances rely on trust. If allies doubt the U.S. commitment, NATO becomes a paper alliance. History shows alliances collapse when trust collapses. A weaker NATO would reshape the world. Europe would rearm. Russia would expand. China would push globally. Military spending would explode. The world would shift from a U.S.-led order to a multipolar world. And multipolar worlds are historically less stable. This debate is not just about Trump. It reflects a global trend toward isolationism. Countries are turning inward. Global institutions are weakening. Trust between allies is eroding. NATO is a symbol of the old world order. Trump represents a challenge to that order. NATO has kept Europe safe for more than 7 decades. But alliances only survive when members believe in them. If the United States steps back, NATO could weaken without officially collapsing. And that could change global security forever. The real question is not whether NATO can survive. The real question is whether the world is prepared for a world without American-led alliances.